This is the first of our breakout sessions. So we've got this afternoon two lots of breakout sessions. This one we will be talking about blockchain. And as it's been described here, it's public authorities are increasingly exploring blockchain's use in the delivery of public services. So I think we'll be looking today at some of the examples of where that's already being used, some kind of use cases, but also maybe potential opportunities for expanding it out to other areas, and then also some of the kind of challenges, what's kind of preventing governments from doing more of this, and what are the benefits of doing it in the first place, or why are we doing this in the first place. We have another great set of speakers here with us, so I'm delighted to introduce them. We have Mai Santa Maria, who heads the Financial Advisory Team in the Department of Finance here in Ireland. Then we have Dominik Freudenthaler, who is the fintech expert at the Federal Ministry of Finance in Austria, and Dina Buser, who is the Deputy Director of Financial Market Policy Department and Head Credit Institution and Payment Services Policy Division at the Ministry of Finance in Latvia. You need a very long business card. Title. And fintechs are not included. And fintechs not included, absolutely. But delighted to have you back with us, Dean, because I think you've already been on one of our webinars as well on the topic of blockchain. So it's lovely to have you here again. So without further ado, I will do what we've done before. I'm going to invite our speakers to give their opening remarks, and then we will open up to you for questions. We're in a more intimate setting here, so don't feel shy. Please get your questions coming as soon as we've heard from our speakers. Over to you, Mai. Thanks so much. Dominik, do you want to go? Oh, that's sure. That's the slide. It's told. That's all right. Opening remarks. I do know that my fellow speakers have some really interesting use cases, so I'll leave them to both of them to discuss those use cases from a public service perspective. I thought maybe I'd discuss with you what we did here in Ireland back in early 2019. Maybe it's of interest to some of your countries. I would love to know. I thought maybe I'd ask which countries you're coming from to get a feel for is European or outside, but I think the example will be useful anyway. So what we did in January 2019 was a whole of government blockchain hackathon. We call it a blockathon, not a very sexy name, but there you go. It was government, so maybe not. We don't want to be too sexy. And it wasn't so much that we wanted to find a use case to apply, but we actually wanted to do two things. One, we wanted the administration people to think of issues, but to openly say they had some processes that could improve, which that in itself sometimes is very difficult to get a government department to admit. There are things that probably don't work. But also then to be comfortable in engaging with private sector and particularly with the discussion of those issues. So it was about blockchain, but it was probably more about actually bringing those two together. It was over Friday evening, Saturday and Sunday. That was a challenge in itself. If you ever had people from government working over a weekend, so that was tough, but we got there. And we had developers, academia, private sector companies, and dedicated departments. We started with 20 odd issues. We had to actually really wriggle them down to about 5 because we couldn't have judges for absolutely everybody. And it was absolutely huge success. You know, by Sunday night, everybody was telling us, please, can we do this again? And what was interesting was some issues were brought to the table. They made it to the final discussions, and it was even the developers. It was a case of, this is a great issue, but we don't need blockchain to solve that. And that in itself allowed government departments that actually came in to Blockathon to see, I understand now what the technology can do, and I understand what the technology cannot do. So we had a website for it. I won't take any more time on it now. I think we're still paying for the website, so I should be able to send you the link if you want to have a look at it. Interestingly enough, the winning solution by the judges was about data, and it was for our Central Statistic Office, how to make sure that they had data that was not tampered with to be able to do whatever it is that they do. So not payments, not identity, it was just a data piece that won the winning prize. So I just wanted to set some background to the work that we did. from a public administration perspective in Ireland. We haven't taken any of those forward, but obviously we're heavily involved with the European blockchain partnership as well to see can we find some solutions at European level. That's okay.
Just to be clear, you're not, the Irish government itself are not using blockchain at the moment?
Not that I'm aware of.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We will come to questions afterwards, I think, but really interesting to hear about the blockathon. I think it was the first one of its kind.
Yeah, we were told at the time that it was the first time done globally. Yeah, that the whole government got together. Yeah, and it was really interesting to see the interest. We had Foreign Affairs, we had the Department of Taoiseach, all came in with problems that they had. Not all of them were hackable, but certainly, as I said, we had actually too many options to hack. But the 5 ones were very, very good.
And again, I think echoing some of the issues we heard in the earlier sessions today around creating those safe spaces where people come in and trial stuff, but also just bridging that gap between the public and the private and learning each other's ways of operating.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I mean, Friday night, despite the free pizza, as all good hackathons should have, you could literally see the government officials, the private sector and the devs in different places, right? It was so obvious a Friday night. It was like, hey, we need more pizza, we need more beer. We need to make this work. I wished we'd video it. Like by Sunday afternoon, you could not tell them apart. Like baseball caps, hand gestures, like team bonding. It was awesome. I get goosebumps thinking about it, honestly. It was so good. And I mean, the CSO actually invited the winning team to present to the board after that. But as everybody said, please, can we do this again? We learned a lot from government, and in terms of actually how problems are solved or have to be understood. Interestingly, the private sector came to us and we did a feedback survey at the end. Came to us with, it is so, how should I phrase this? It was so refreshing, and that the trust in the government had increased because they openly put issues to be solved out on the public. Right. And that actually was a very, very interesting feedback point.
So do you have plans for another one?
We did have plans for another one until COVID got in the way. And then COVID came in, and with the whole issue with medical equipment, I kid you not, that was number 2 in the blockathon. Wow. Hard to keep track of that. Yeah, it's just like if we'd had that solution in place, a lot of the issues would probably have been solved earlier. So maybe in the future.
So maybe by this time next year, you can report back in your next second blockathon. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you. Dominic, over to you.
Yes, hello from my side as well. I was invited to talk about public use of blockchain, and I thought hard about it, and I picked one example that is probably very easy to understand. But before I show you, I wanted to say, Siobhan, you agreed I can be a bit provocative as well. And one of the provocative statements I might add now is that blockchain is a wonderful solution for problems we haven't found yet sometimes. And especially if you think about blockchain being a technology that is able to erase the problem of having a central trusted party, is probably not the perfect solution for a government or state that should be a trusted party in the middle of all of us, and has even the very high standards of being trusted, and hopefully always is. But I picked one example that might be very easy to understand, and I even brought an item of display with me. This is actually the use case I wanted to present to you. Anyone knows what that is? Yeah, it's a cash slip. And do you see anything on that cash slip that you might not be used from your own cash slips in your country? Exactly. And that is the reason why I brought it along, because that QR code is the access to a blockchain. A blockchain that we are using in the, of course, if anyone wants to check in. The problem we've had as tax authorities was that we had fraud cases in cash registries. And those fraud cases are actually very hard to track. We had and I have to think back to panel 2, I think it was, where the book was mentioned. We should not underestimate humans, because we have very, very talented tax inspectors. Because from the cash registry, you can't tell if that was manipulated or not. They have very sophisticated software that is actually manipulating the turnover of the merchant, and you were not able to tell that it was manipulated. Even we do have some stories of very talented tax inspectors that got, I mean, I can tell it, of course. They had a sausage stand where the tax inspector did an audit, and he was, suspicious that something was being manipulated. So what he did was actually he bought a pair of sausages, and he measured the amount of mustard and ketchup that he got. And then he compared the amount of sausages that were in the turnover sold and the amount of ketchup and mustard that would correspond to that, and that did not match. So you should not underestimate humans. So you see, they do have very intelligent solutions for problems. But let's get back to the cash slip. What this blockchain does, it, of course, in a way, connects all the transactions. So if you fiddle with the transactions previous to the transaction you have at hand, you would be able to tell in 1 second. And that was implemented a couple of years ago. And that is a second thing I want to talk about, because even though solutions might be there, and also in the previous panels when we talked about data integrity and all that stuff, I think data can be very honest, but we people have to deal with that. And that is usually the issue, because also this technological solution might not be bulletproof. Because if you have a merchant or a bar or whatever you call it, that wants to be fraudulent, you can still be, because you can just not type it into the cash register. So we always have to be careful when it comes to technology that can solve problems. It might not solve all problems. And also, sometimes solutions are there, but there is resistance of having a solution. For example, once we introduced the electronic cash register and the blockchain technology behind it, of course, there was huge resistance from merchants and so on, because, of course, this makes a probably practice that was widely practiced very easy to find. And I can tell you that it was challenged until the Constitutional Court that actually said that this was all legal and perfectly constitutional. But you see that it's not always just the technology that's not there, but it is also other factors of resistance that might come up. Coming back to blockchain, I brought along, in Austria, we do have the Austrian Blockchain Center. I'm not going to talk about all those institutions and companies, but I wanted to give you a short glimpse of, and you can find that on LinkedIn. I'm happy to provide you with the link if you want to have it. That we have a very vibrant, and fruitful environment for blockchain use and also for fintech use. And that just give you an impression of what is going on in Austria. And we're very proud that I've been told that it is about, it's of course difficult to count it perfectly accurate, but around 400 blockchain related companies, institutions, firms. And that is, if you compare it to other European nations, a lot more than would be proportionate to our population. And one last thing I wanted to talk about, if you talk about innovation and the use of technology, is of course sandboxing. We've had that in previous panels, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, because also I've already been having a long intro statement. These 4 steps are actually the steps you have to undergo if you want to become a participant and manage to go through the Austrian sandbox. This is not the only measure we have in place. We do also have a contact point or innovation hub at our financial market authority. We do have an accelerator at our national bank. And the sandbox was an outcome of the FinTech Advisory Board. We have the Ministry of Finance, where we actually tried to have that transparency and conversation with our stakeholders, where we tried to listen what they need in order to succeed and innovate. Maybe before I go into detail, or maybe I'm not going into detail in the matter of time at all, some points that were important for me because they surprised me as well was sometimes it's not even the question of having a license or not, because there are also incumbent banks, for example. So in Austria, it is also possible as an incumbent to enter a sandbox, because we've heard that in some banks, the issue of compliance anxiety is an issue. So they have innovative ideas, but then they come to compliance and they were like, no, I'm not so sure. And then you have the C-suite that says, if they're not sure, then we're probably not having it. So killing innovation in a bigger structure is an issue. So we tried to address that in order to foster innovation by inviting innovation also in bigger structures and being able to have them in a sandbox, even though they already might have a license. And what you can see here are the 4 steps. I'm not going into detail in the matter of time, but that was my short intro I wanted to give you for the Austrian perspective.
Thank you so much, Dominic. I like your challenge at the beginning. Is this kind of a fintech solution for problems we haven't found yet? The audience might have thoughts on that. But I think you win the best anecdote of the day with your question around the sausage sellers and the tax inspectors. I think that will have to go in the write-up of the event, definitely. But also great to hear have your example of kind of how you are using this already, and just what you said there about sandboxing. Again, I think mirroring some of what we heard today, providing those spaces where you can help people, as you've put it, with compliance anxiety. So I think really helpful. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Dina, over to you.
Yes. Thank you. So basically, my story will be something like of my case, but not called the blockathon. We had a very similar event like blockathon with our industry participants and also government institutions while defining our fintech strategy. Fintech strategy was adopted this year in January, and I think also global government has already had some visibility also for our fintech strategy. But I would like to describe this process. We were let's say brainstorming in 4 streams. Because we found that we need to have, let's say, a structure how to structure this fintech strategy around 4 blocks, which we found very important in discussions with market participants, other institutions, and all involved sector representatives. One stream was regulation and regulatory environment. The second was the licensing process and all the solutions which come with the licensing, for example, which has been brought already by my colleague Marina Krasowska before. In the first panel, the sandbox is operating, the innovation hub as well for fintechs and for let's say testing these ideas. Then we had a work stream on the talent pool, on attraction of the talent, and this involves let's say 2 parts. One part is attraction of the talent from abroad, and the second one is let's say making our higher educational establishments to think more about fintech, about financial engineering, and to make a dedicated programs for let's say bringing more highly skilled specialists to the sector, because we know without knowledge we cannot create this ecosystem. Because of the lack of the staff, and of course the knowledge part is very, very important. And then the fourth stream was dedicated to the marketing, because we wanted as well to show what we
what we are doing with our fintech environment and what are our goals. So to bring more visibility. And in all these 4 work streams, we then narrowed down to the possibility of the use cases of blockchain as well. So we are now coming to the substance of our panel, and we had ideas about how the blockchain technologies can be used in public sector and as well in the private sector. And here we are also referring to this market in crypto assets regulation, which we have a favor of being, let's say, European Union being the first jurisdiction which has set a definite scene and set of rules for operation. And I also was looking just in LinkedIn that some of the UK politicians said that crypto assets is something like gambling, but we are not taking such approach in the European Union, and we will, let's say, go forward with this implementation of MiCA and the traction of the crypto asset service providers in more looking from the financial services perspective, but not as a gambling. Yes, and so we have already developed the draft national legislation for starting discussions with the sector on implementation of the market in crypto assets, because we are looking forward for within the 12 months time for getting ready for the market participants to have this European passporting. And of course, European passporting is the one which is of the most interest of the market participants, because blockchain is all and crypto assets is all about operation cross borders. It's you cannot develop and you cannot make a big change if you are operating only nationally. Then, of course, the other set of very clear rules in the EU is DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Yes, and it's coming exactly the same time and exactly on time for MiCA, and we also have made the preparations for very fast implementation of this piece of European legislation, and of course we can reap the benefits of crypto assets, but we always have to look at the issues which are related with cybersecurity. But if we are speaking about blockchain and blockchain technologies, I said that we have come to the different use cases and we were discussing them within governmental institutions, and also they were brought up by our blockchain association, and these different use cases were. For example, we are now in a very deep discussions with our State Revenue Service, which is a tax authority, for a possibility to pay taxes in digital currencies, virtual currencies, and for this solution to use a blockchain, we have looked at different perspectives that. Let's say what kind of technology needs to be applied, how to make, for example, how to make the system with providing of liquidity, because we have came around the solution that before it is paid. For our State Revenue Service, it had to be exchanged from the virtual currency to euros, of course, and we have to solve all the things with this conversion and the provision of liquidity for implementing this possibility. And the second one is about the possibility to pay statutory capital, which is a compulsory requirement for registering of the enterprises in digital currency, virtual currencies. And this is possible, but we are planning to make also the legislative changes, and I think that this will bring one more piece in the possibility of our more favorable environment for fintech scene, and it is one of the possible areas where we are thinking to go. And of course about the issuing of green bonds in blockchain.
Yeah, brilliant. Dina, I'm just conscious we will need to allow time for the audience to come in, but I think you've got loads there, so thank you so much. I mean, interesting really to hear how much Latvia are thinking about new kind of possibilities. I think you've given the two examples there of paying statutory capital and paying taxes using kind of digital currencies. And then I'm glad you talked about the issuance of bonds, because I think that's probably the case, the example that people are most familiar with.
Yes.
I think, when it comes to blockchain. And we've got a session coming later on fintech and sustainability, fintech and meeting our sustainable development goals, and issuing of green bonds is one thing I think that people will be thinking about. I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to ask anything just yet. I'll come back if we have silence from the room, but we have questions already. So yes, okay, thank you, Nazim.
Dominic, may I ask you a question in regards to the solution that you implemented? My understanding, this is for details, right? The receipts?
Yeah.
Right. The blockchain, there are actually three issues with the blockchain solutions. One of them is transaction processing speed, the other one is security, and the third one is scalability. So in regards to this solution being used all over your country, right?
Yes.
So you have no issues with the registering every single transaction on a blockchain, because the writing
because it is, usually you would, of course we are using a private platform that is also hosted with our IT services. So we're not using a decentralized blockchain, so to speak. It is a blockchain that allows the hashing of transactions. So you could tell if there was a manipulation with previous transactions, but it is all processed within the state realm, to say so. It's a permission blockchain. It's not a decentralized blockchain. That was what I said initially, that it is actually something that the authors of blockchain, which are of course not known,
Bitcoin
would. So yeah, exactly. It is the exact opposite of Bitcoin and usual blockchain use, because there you wouldn't have a central trusted party, but we picked out one aspect of it that we can use as a government, and we put it on tracks that were suitable for us. So we don't have an issue with the transaction volume. We don't have an issue with all that. But of course, it's not decentralized because we're using it as a central agent.
What do you use? R3? No, do you know?
To be honest, I'm not the IT guy, but I'm happy to connect you with those.
Yeah, because I had some questions.
But just to add, you were asking if we're using it everywhere. Yes, the threshold for it is that you have a certain amount of cash handling. And if you are above that limit, I think it's 15,000 euros a year, and there are some other thresholds as well, you have to have a cash register that is able to handle this digital safety standard, so to speak. And just to put out something else, because we were talking about, resistance and not wanting to have a solution that might be a solution to issues some stakeholders might not really like. For example, we are all talking about sustainability, and of course that was an issue where everyone said like, now we need to have cash slips, and those cash slips get longer because we need a QR code on it, and we need so much paper for that. That is probably not even in the law, because in the law you can also have this cash slip in a digital form. No one using that, and of course they left out that in the discussion that you can of course issue digitally, but they were only focusing on the issue of being environmentally because you need to have a cash slip now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Cheers.
Just on that, and this isn't a challenge, just an educational question. I'm just curious. Thank you. I've got a pretty loud voice, but it's okay. Given you're not using DLT for those reasons, what is the core benefit of using a blockchain within a trust framework and government rails and the rest that you couldn't do with regular block-based technology and the rest, right? Hashing.
Yeah. To be honest, it is probably just an hashing issue. So we use the word block. I mean, coming back to the open banking in the panel before, so Barbara just left. I was also a bit puzzled why we did not use the word payments, because open banking in the PSD2 context is probably a bit more than just payments. And here you probably, I do agree, it's mostly hashing and having hash values that are not allowing manipulations of transactions.
Can I put that question kind of to all of you on the panel? So what are the benefits? Because it's interesting, blockchain's talked about a lot, and yet there aren't that many examples of where governments are using this new technology at the moment.
Listen, it's a great question. I was going to say, you probably have less examples of actual use cases, so this is fantastic. And I can see they've used a permissioned tab ledger. They do use DLT, but it's a permissioned font. Maybe it's Hyperledger, which was already being used. I think it was actually used at the time in Australia. And that's with the trust. You still want the hash, the transactions, the transparency, the immutability. Yeah. You just want to keep the trust and these permissions. So I totally see this. There are probably less, as I said, working examples, and this is fantastic to see. It doesn't mean that governments are not looking for them. Mm-hmm. So we here in Ireland did look at some of them, and in conjunction actually with academia. So we had Trinity had a very interesting project back in 2017, I think it was 2018 maybe, and this is about voting and using Zcash, which is privacy. Talk about total privacy enhancing, but you vote, you want that vote to be totally anonymous, but now we find out that you can trace transactions on the blockchain. So even just looking at IP might actually, show who voted for who. So we did look at it. We also looked in conjunction with two other regional governments in Europe at solutions for pricing renewable energy and actually incentivize small communities of prosumers when it comes to actually, they were looking at solar energy, and we actually looked at wind energy and how we could actually incentivize that usage and then payment directly to the grid. We looked at it, but clearly looking and the process of having the whole setup, as Dominic has described, it's a huge leap still. And even just the legalities to make sure, what do we need in place? By the time we looked at that project, we could not legally sell excess energy into the grid in Ireland. So small things for big things, right? So I do think there are cases, supply chain management. We've seen cases, for example, Maersk, again, a very, very old case. The Bondi issue, another like the green bonds. There are already use cases, but the leap, and it's all about that trust, I think, from that use case or that POC to actually happening, it's a huge, because there's lots of hurdles. And particularly as well, as the government, as an administration, you get it wrong. And this is, for those of the Irish people in the audience, we don't have a national identity card in Ireland. And we have in Ireland a natural mistrust or uncomfortable. We're a bit uncomfortable with actually having a national ID card, whereas I have my own national identity card from Spain. I don't have a problem with it. but maybe the difference is there was an attempt to do such a thing in the past in Ireland. It didn't work so well. We're still hanging on to that aftertaste. So getting it wrong from a government department has a huge cost. Huge cost.
So this is where you could tell I'm not very technical. So the issue linking to national ID is that for the blockchain, for public service delivery, really you need a digital ID for that to work. So in Latvia, for example, are you able to be a bit slightly more advanced in your journey because you do have digital ID system in place?
We do have, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so your answer to the question about what are the benefits, obviously you do see benefits in using this.
Yes, I can name them. The speed, how you process everything.
Yeah.
So it's a consumption of time, consumption of the human resources. But of course, you at all times have to have the oversight mechanism over this solutions, and but for the government, it's definitely and obviously a lot of saving of resources.
Does that answer your question? Other questions in the room? Yes.
How would you explain blockchain like layman service to people? I know you all described your own personal experience with blockchain, but just like for the dummies, including me in the audience, how would you describe, because I know there's not one definition, I know it's multifaceted, but just in layman's terms, how would you describe the technology?
And I've been asking this question for about a year, so yeah, you go.
I'll tell you, I use the Excel example. I've gone through now 3 different sets of ministers in the finance ministry the last 5 years, and the Excel example has worked for me. And probably might show my age. Not people use Excel anymore that much, but imagine you have Excel, and in an Excel sheet you have different tabs, right? From a blockchain perspective, the way I explained it in the past was you'd fill in your whole worksheet with transaction data. On one row, I tell you what you pay you, and the next row you tell me what you pay me. It's all linked. You finish that tab, you move on to the next tab. But there's a link between the bottom of that tab and the next tab, and you cannot break it. So nobody could actually delete or change or edit any of the rows or cells in that tab and not break the link on the next sheet, and you continue to fill in worksheets. That was my 30 seconds. Hope that worked.
Does that help? Does anyone in the room want
What
to
you're
add
just
to that?
describing is actually hashing.
Yeah. Yes.
So I would say blockchain is a lot more.
Of course.
Are you familiar with the term of distributed ledgers? Right. That is easy, because what you solve with distributed ledgers is if you distribute the ledger. We'll start very early. You have the double spending problem. Currencies work because you can't copy the currency and spend it a second time. If you have something in digital, this double spending is a huge issue because you can copy something at no cost and you cannot tell it apart. Hence, you need to solve that. And that is easily solved by having a distributed ledger, because if you have a distributed ledger, you can't fiddle with the transactions because many people have it. But then you come up with the problem, what is the golden copy? And that is solved by other solutions, one of them being the blockchain and hashing. Because if you hash all the transactions in blocks, that is actually just done because you need to have smaller transaction data. Yeah. And I hope some IT guys might correct me now if I say something wrong, but from my little jurist understanding of the technique, you need to minimize the data, you hash every transaction block, and the hash from the transaction block before is in the next transaction block. So if you change one transaction, one number, whatever, the hash of the whole chain is not working anymore. And that is a wonderful technology. And now I actually falsified what I said about the about my little cash slip, because we don't have distributed ledgers. We actually have those ledgers just with us, but we use, and that's what I said to you before, we use hashing. That is already a wonderful technology. Did that answer your question?
But basically, the main idea is that you cannot manipulate these data. Basically, that's the whole idea of the blockchain, and that brings also the matter that it can be trusted. It can be very transparent because you can see every transaction. So
Yeah.
And there you get the problem, because what you might perfectly described, seeing every transaction is an issue. I mean, I can think back of the early days or earlier days of Bitcoin, where we have a known working party on financial crime and so on in the Ministry of Finance. And everyone was like, oh, Bitcoin, no, we can't trace nothing. And now experts are actually laughing and saying, yeah, Bitcoin's perfect. I just need this tiny little link from the public key to the person behind it. And once I have that, I have everything in an open book. Yeah. So I just need if you come back to our back transactions, your IBAN, and I know every transaction on your account. So we always have to keep that in mind if we talk about blockchain and publicity. Yeah. And that limits the use possibility if you think about GDPR, if you think about data protection. And these are fundamental rights. So we cannot just say, nah, we're not honoring them.
Certainly. To the example of bringing it all together, so maybe to summarize, to the example of the Excel file, imagine then that Excel file was online for anyone in the world, for everyone to see. So it would be very hard, and particularly if it's protected, say it's protected, it'd be very hard for any one person to go in and change that particular edit, because somebody else would spot. Yeah, so that's what makes it immutable and trustable, because nobody's changed it. Could a government, would an administration want to use that? Well, if that's on my health data, on my public service card data, I don't want the whole world to know my details. So on one side, you can see the benefits, something that can be recorded and never changed. But on the other side, there's an element of, I don't want anyone to know my public detail. And that's why there are things called permissioned, whereas you have an Excel file, but only a few people have the password to it. Yes, which I think you've probably done in Austria. So to be honest, it's a bit like transport modes. I tell people, you could get a scooter and go to New York if you wanted. It would take you time, and you probably have to get a ferry. But most likely, we might be more likely to take the scooter just to the DART station, right? And with the different types of blockchain platforms, there are different types to suit the needs, I think, of the solution. I think that's very important. It's not like the Lord of the Rings, there's one ring there to bind them all. There's one platform to make all the citizens and governments happy. It's not the case. You get to choose depending on the risk. And I think that the tributes that you're trying to solve.
Thanks. Oh, Peter. So let's go on to another. You can come back afterwards. Peter.
I was actually going to ask this of Dominic, because you raised GDPR, so this is your fault. How do you reconcile blockchain with Article 17, the right to be forgotten, and erasure? So I often hear people will say, oh, but you don't hash personal data on the blockchain. And we all know that's BS, because that is what's happening. So I want to be forgotten in relation to something. How is that addressed? Because that would seem to be a conflict between an EU regulation and a DLT.
You're asking that in specific to my cash slip?
Well, actually, I have a second question.
Because I see we'll wait some more time. To be honest, in my cash slip, I don't see an issue, because you don't have any personal data here. So you just have transactional data. There is no personalized issue with that. So if you personalize your cash slip, you would not need to have it in our QR blockchain system. So if you have personal data on it, that's enough for our tax administration issues. It's just if you have anonymous cash transactions where you need to have a cash register, and there you don't have personal data. You just have a transaction volume, what you paid, and a transaction number. So I don't see any issue with the right to be forgotten, because there is no personal data.
Because there's no personal data.
There is nothing personal in it. Yeah. It's just transaction data. So I don't see an issue with GDPR here. But on all the other issues, I see an issue. But probably there are many use cases where Article 7 that you just mentioned could be an issue. I'm thinking about, another very popular example for blockchain or DLT use, or let's stay with blockchain, is land registries, which I never understood. Because if you have a working land register, and Austria has one since the monarchy, which is long gone, then, as you said, you just need someone who is gatekeeping this Excel spreadsheet and ensuring that the land register is accurate and correct. But also here, you don't have a right to be forgotten in the land register, because
it's very interesting when you say that, though, because we've done webinars in particular with developing countries where land registry came up as a use where the citizens really wanted it because they didn't trust.
Yeah, I do understand that issue, but if you have really, I'm not referring to any specific country, but if that is the reason why you want to have blockchain, because you have a huge amount of corruption, no trustworthy gatekeepers, and the system is not working, and you're trying to have technology to substitute for that, then I'm wondering if this country is so corrupted, is that really solving the problem? Because then probably a warlord comes along and says, yeah, you might be in the blockchain, but I don't care. You pay me or this is not your land anymore. So I think if you look at it from a perspective of transaction efficiency, because you're getting rid of all the judges and you get rid of the judicial system that now is a lot of cost, then I would accept this argument. But this argument of it is uncorruptible might be true. And that is something what we really have to admire. If we look at Bitcoin, for example, there were a lot of fraudulent issues, but that never was in relation to Bitcoin itself. It was just in relation to exchanges. It was where people were not in possession of their own Bitcoins. But the Bitcoin system itself, what Satoshi Nakamoto designed, works today flawlessly. Please correct me if someone knows something else, but all the... there were no downturns. And I think we really have to be curious how perfect this system works to date. But as I said, it is a wonderful solution for problems we as governments probably have not found yet. And I think the land register is one issue where I don't see the use case. If you say you have a lot of corruption, that might be an issue, but that probably will not be solved by the technology.
So basically, summing it up, you cannot solve the governance problems with the technology. That's right.
You can probably mitigate it, but if things are so bad that you're not trusting the judge who is in charge of keeping the land register, you're probably not solving that with a blockchain.
Yeah. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. Does anybody else? I really loved your question, the layman's term for... does anyone else have a final question that they would like to put to our brilliant speakers here? Or do I... Yes.
After the FTX kind of story, I think people have got, think a little bit in terms of trust. I work in technology, so from technology perspective, I think we are very much into it, to use and solve the use cases and everything. But from a trust perspective as well, I think, if something fails, it has cause implications in terms of the wider community as well. I think if Bitcoin is falling or anything, how do you think, in terms of down the years, using this thing as a technology will be facing a wider adoptability challenge from the ecosystem because of the, failure incidents and everything?
I think that you can never escape these problems of let's say trust crisis. That's for sure. But I think that we have already come to the solution with our MiCA regulation. For example, when you have a certain set of rules which have to be observed, and you also have a system which is supervising and looking at whether these rules are observed. I think this is a solution, and the main idea why FTX scandal was present is that there is practically no regulation, and we are seeing that in other jurisdictions there is also not a very big willingness to regulate this sector.
Dominic and Maura, would you like to add in 20 seconds anything to the question of trust?
I think we need to have a lot more education. I think crypto winter is probably not even happening. So I was at a conference shortly before, and I think we not ought to look just at price of Bitcoin. If you look to active addresses, a lot of other quantitative figures, you will not be able to find crypto winter after FTX now. So I think there will be a lot to come. And I agree with Dina. MiCA will make a difference. I'm, as a regulator myself, sometimes critical about regulation. But as some market participants said, clarity is very important. And the European Union managed this time to be the first mover. I don't see any kind of clear frameworks in the US and not in Asia, at least China.
No, in China it's very clear cut.
Yeah, it is. It's very clear cut, but not very innovation friendly. So probably the European Union, for some reason, did something right here. But let's see how it develops.
More, anything to add?
Yeah, on trust, I'd say trust is not set in stone and it's evolving all the time. And I think the clear example of that is around you. I mean, when Amazon came out, people thought you'd be mad to purchase something from a guy you can look at the face or one in a shop. And now we all use Amazon. You jump into cars with people you've never seen, you never trust before. You exchange your houses with people you've never seen before. What is trust? You know, people put trust in a blue tick. I think trust evolves, and I think it's becoming more nuanced and more personal. So you might trust on something on a variety of reasons, you know, and it could be a combination of price and service, accessibility. I think that just put trust into one single thing is just too complex where we in the world that we live today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are out of time. Who knew a session on blockchain would be so exciting? Thank you so much.
Questions.